This world is beyond cruelty. You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades. My family's been fighting them for centuries.
Paul Atreides is still alive.
Look who's back from the dead.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope! I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis,
Dune Part 2 is directed by Denis Villeneuve and continues the story of Paul Atreides seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Now facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the universe, he must prevent a terrible future only he can foresee. Longtime viewers of my channel would know by now that I was originally not a big fan of the first Dune when it released back in 2021, mainly because it felt like a setup for a more interesting movie rather than a solid standalone film. But after rewatching Part 1, I don't know what I was thinking.
Oh my God. I get it.
On the second go-around, I was completely taken aback by this world, these characters, the sheer scale, and the true epic nature of it all. Every exposition dump that bored me the first viewing grabbed me, and by the time Zendaya said,
This is only the beginning.
my hype for the sequel skyrocketed. In fact, I'd like to take this time right now to bump my rating for Part 1 from a 6 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. So now with my redemption arc complete, I went into Part 2 beyond excited to see where the story was heading next. And that statement right there is your disclaimer that this review is coming from someone who has not read the original novel, so I won't be making any comparisons to the source material in this video. With that out of the way, after seeing this, I think that if Denis makes one more of these movies, we might just have the best film trilogy since Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. I mean it. This is the kind of film that will go down in the history books as one of the greatest cinematic accomplishments put to film. And I know that may sound like I'm overhyping this, but you're just going to have to trust me. This is the kind of film the art of cinema was made for. Just from a technical perspective alone, this film left me speechless. The scope of this film is breathtaking. Every shot captured by Greg Fraser is a sight to behold. It captures all the beauty and scale of this world while using the comparison between the foreground and background to its full advantage. This is one of those rare blockbusters that truly feels big, not just in the story, but in how large the environment and scale of this world is. The sound design is also phenomenal. It contributes so much to the atmosphere and sheer euphoria on display. And I don't think it should be a surprise when I say Hans Zimmer's score was masterful. What should be a surprise though is that I think this might be his best score yet. Which I know is a huge claim to make, but I really do think it was that exceptional. And the visual effects are nothing less than staggering. We've gotten a lot of movies recently with weak CGI because of the unfortunate mistreatment and tight deadlines for the artists working on set effects. This is not one of those films though. These are some of the best visuals you can find in a modern blockbuster, and they are bound to hold up years later. Even the production design, the editing, the costumes are all on another level, and when you consider all these technical elements and present them in such a large format, it leads to a truly immersive experience. It's the kind that you want to see in a big film like this. Something that just teleports you into a rich, imaginative world unlike any other, which I feel is exactly what a blockbuster like this should do. It's remarkable. And on top of feeling that immersion, the world itself is fascinating, and that comes across through some deeply layered world building throughout the film. The different groups of people, how they live and survive, their relationships with other planets, how this ecosystem works, and how precious these resources are to the Fremen and all these groups at war with each other. You get to understand everything, and you end up becoming so fascinated that it doesn't matter how this information is being delivered. You just want to know more about this world and its people. The film also manages to avoid unnecessary exposition dumps. So much of the nearly 3-hour runtime is dedicated to the plot and characters. Instead, the film delivers its heavy lore in a way that's nuanced but easy to pick up on and get invested in. There's almost no filler in this film. The movie is dead focused on the gripping narrative, which is probably because so much of the first film was dedicated to establishing this world. So now that all of that is out of the way, Denis gets to fully capture the epic, thematically deep storyline at the core of these movies. The one thing I was worried about going into this film was how the romance between Paul and Chani would be handled. I wasn't sure if it would end up distracting from the main story, or worse, come off as some kind of cheesy young adult novel romance we'd see from that era of teen movies. But to my surprise, the romance aspect of this film was one of my favorite parts. Getting to learn about Chani and her motivations, finding out how they align or conflict with Paul's quest for revenge or his role as a messiah, having them grow closer only to see conflicts arise between them. It's amazing, and I ended up getting so invested in their relationship and wanted to see where it was heading. The characters in general are all so immensely fascinating. There's so much to all of them, and even with the overabundance of them, there wasn't a moment where I felt like one didn't get enough screen time or scenes to flesh them out more. And for all I know, the ones who I wanted more screen time from will get that in the next film. At the helm, Timothée Chalamet gives what might be the best performance of his career so far. He's demanding in every scene and brings so much power to the character of Paul. Zendaya is another highlight. Thankfully, she's not reduced to 3 minutes of screen time like in part 1 and makes the absolute most of every minute of screen time she gets here. Austin Butler was another perfect casting choice, and to say I felt intimidated by his character would be a massive understatement. You feel the danger and relentless presence his character brings. The same goes for Josh Brolin. He might not have had too much screen time in part 1. I mean, more than Zendaya, but still not too much. He was a standout character for me in this film, and I got so invested in his journey of revenge. Javier Bardem was another one of those standouts for me. I've been a fan of his for a while, and his performance here was incredible. A much-needed return to greatness for him after his role in the Little Mermaid remake last year. Stellan Skarsgård, Christopher Walken, and Rebecca Ferguson all gave amazing performances as well. Everyone in this movie was just so well casted and believable in their roles. But even with so many masterful scenes like the worm riding sequence, it was the third act that solidified this movie as a landmark event in blockbuster filmmaking. This might be my favorite action climax in any movie since James Cameron's Avatar, and I don't say that lightly. Everything from the massive final battle to the lighting, the camera angles, the editing, the payoff to so many character arcs and storylines, all the way down to the final confrontation with some of the best fight choreography I've ever seen on film is just unfathomable. The choice to have the score limited in that final action scene also really amplified the sheer intensity of that confrontation. Just perfect. Just pure cinema. Now, I will admit that I have a few very small issues with this film, and that mostly comes down to a few creative choices in the first and third acts I didn't agree with. I don't want to spoil them for those who haven't seen this film yet, but some things towards the beginning and end of the film didn't have the kind of impact I would have thought they'd have. But even then, those problems were so small and easy to look past that I could see them completely evaporating on rewatch. Or better, when the third movie comes out and possibly expands on the narrative choices made here. So the way I see it, there's no point in holding those flaws against this film right now. Dune Part 2 is a thrilling, visually breathtaking, monumental feat in the art of filmmaking, and an instant classic that will be talked about as a medium-defining blockbuster for generations to come. This is undoubtedly the must-watch movie of the year. It's absolutely worth the price of admission and 3-hour runtime just to experience this grand, sweeping, immersive sci-fi epic we rarely see nowadays. With this film, not only has Denis Villeneuve solidified himself as one of the best filmmakers working today, but he's proven that we are experiencing the next great blockbuster trilogy, right up there with Lord of the Rings and the original Star Wars movies. This isn't just the perfect continuation of a great franchise, it's a reminder of why we love going to the movies and why the art of cinema is worth supporting. I'm going to give Dune Part 2 a 10 out of 10. What other rating was it going to get? Now that I think about it, I've been giving out a lot of 10 out of 10s recently. Cinema is back! So those are my thoughts on Dune Part 2. Feel free to leave your own thoughts on the film in the comments below. Thanks for watching. As always, if you like this review and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That really helps me out. Remember to like the video and ring that notification bell to be notified for any upcoming reviews.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.